How's it going, comic book fans? Welcome back to another minute-ish review on Cafeteria Drops. You know, I didn't think things could get any worse from Valiant and Alien books after reading the steaming pile that was Livewire and the Secret Weapons. Well, Valiant apparently watched that previous video, said hold my beer, and commissioned some poor creative team to produce Faith Returns #1. When I say that this title is an absolutely absurd joke, I mean it. The jokes literally write themselves with this release. So how bad is Faith Returns issue #1? Stay tuned to find out the horrifying truth. Alright, first let's take a look at this so-called story that Faith Returns #1 has. So on writing duties for this run of Faith is Jody Hauser, who has handled multiple other runs of this series. So how does Hauser handle the adventures of Valiant's body positivity superhero who's a big fan of Hillary Clinton? Oh, I don't want to put you through this, but I am. Before I get to anything else, I just want you guys to hear the first line of the synopsis of this comic. It's really an inside joke, it has to be. It's inside the cover and it states, Faith's world crumbled under the weight of a wrongful accusation. Really, Valiant? I mean, this is some low-hanging fruit when it comes to making fun of Faith. But the jokes continue to write themselves throughout the entirety of this joke of a story. So the comic opens with Faith living in disguise, because the villainous group, the Faithless, just the name makes me want to cringe, framed her for murder. After this revelation, everyone just hates Faith, with even TV documentaries being made about her fall from grace. So essentially, she's being treated in her own book like most of the Valiant fandom treats her. I, for one, pretend she doesn't exist. Anyways, after leaving work one day, a vehicle drives frantically up to Faith and stops only for General Capshaw herself to urge Faith to climb in. Faith again laments that her reputation is shot again, just like reality. I mean, I haven't met a single person who likes Faith. Capshaw promises to make the murder charge go away if Faith will agree to help her out. Now keep in mind, the whole Valiant situation is going on, and Capshaw has direct lines to the Eternal Warrior, Tama the Geomancer, Shadow Man, Quantum and Woody, Archer and Armstrong, Exo Man-O-War, and many other heavy hitters in the Valiant universe. Why in God's name is she turning to the single most useless superhero, and I use that term loosely here, for help? Maybe the writer is making a cruel joke here. I mean, I'm not really sure. Of course, the well-liked, awesome action comic duo of Archer and Armstrong has to be brought into this mess as well. Valiant, do you just like ruining all that is sacred in your universe? And after the meeting, they travel to Las Vegas to find a magician named Magic Mouse. Lame. Who can help them find the other members of the Faithless because he's renounced his villainous ways to entertain literally 2 audience members with magic tricks. I'm not kidding. At this point, I just wanted to give up. In fact, I was about to request a refund from the eBay seller I bought this book from. Why? Because I ordered a comic book, not a pile of dog crap. However, I decided to continue to wade through this narrative filth because I like you guys, and I don't wish this experience on anyone. Suddenly, Magician Guy spawns a demon out of a hat and Faith changes into her overly generic costume on stage, only to have the demon throw a slot machine at her. That's great. Here we go, I'm rooting for the demon in this fight. Let's go, poorly drawn demon. Unfortunately, my wish for Faith to be defeated was not granted by the Valiant gods, and Archer shoots a crossbow bolt with a vase attached to it at the demon, and the demon gets sucked in. Who knew it was that easy to capture a demon? Then Magician Guy gives Faith a red jewel that transports her Archer and Armstrong to New York because the Faithless are there or something. I'm not really sure. The issue ends with the phrase, "Faith takes a bite out of the Big Apple, to be continued." You know, there's a joke here, but I think that fruit is already lying on the ground, so I'm just going to leave it laying right there. Overall, Valiant, why do you do this? This story is absolutely insufferable and torturous to read through. Even appearances by my two favorite Valiant characters can't save this excrement. If I'm going to be specific, the characters lack any development, the villains are essentially non-existent, the pacing is boring, and again, it stars the Valiant character that everyone hates. Stop pushing this character, please. In fact, I would argue that compared to other Valiant heroes, Faith is as useless as can be, and only continues to be pushed to pander to certain demographics, if you know what I mean. And another thing, Valiant, why in God's name would you give Faith Returns #1 22 pages to tell its insufferable story, and only give the Valiant's #1 18 pages to do the same? One is your flagship series, Road to Resurgence, kicking off this new event, and the other one is a character nobody likes. The logic here makes no sense. Oh, well, I don't really want to, but let's take a look at the visuals for Faith Returns #1. Are they as bad as the story? Well, yes, they are actually. Maybe even slightly worse, if that's possible. In Faith Returns #1, the art and colors are handled by the same person, namely Alita Vidal, whose credits include books for Dark Horse, DC Comics, and Alter Comics. It can't be that bad, right? Well, first off, Alita, I just want to express my sympathy for your situation. You came over to Valiant with the best of intentions, only to be given the worst character and the worst book I have ever read to draw and color. And I'm not exaggerating on that worst book ever comment. Unfortunately, I guess the quality of the terrible story rubbed off on the artist. Now, like I said in the beginning, I thought that Livewire and the Secret Weapons had bad art, but this book might even be worse. Characters' body proportions are all out of whack. Faces look like they have been stretched needlessly, and hands, feet, and facial details are inconsistent throughout the entirety of the book. And for some reason, characters also have this strange comic coloring book look to them. And another thing, the immense tragedy of how they made Armstrong look in this issue just makes my Valiant fan heart hurt. Why, Valiant? You're supposed to resurge. This is Resurgence. Road to Resurgence. Can't you just do this right? Just take a look at some of these other examples of the pinnacle of comic art in this issue. The colors don't fare too well either, although I will say that they are better than the story and the art. The problem here is the overly simplistic look of everything. It really looks like Vidal put in the absolute smallest amount of effort she could coloring this book. After flattening the panels, it looked like maybe 1 or 2 degrees of tinting and shading was used to render each page, making it look completely cheap. If there was anything positive I could say here, it would be that the colors are vibrant, but that's stretching it for sure. On the visual side of things, there is really only one positive I can point out for Faith Returns #1. The trade dress is excellent again. Valiant and Alien books seem to have this down to a science. The cover is thick cardstock and the pages are thick and glossy. Now, if they can just actually produce a comic worth reading and make it visually captivating. Okay, let's wrap up this soiled baby diaper of a comic review. To summarize my points on Faith Returns #1 by Jody Hauser and Alita Vidal, do not, I repeat, do not buy this book. Do not support Valiant and Alien books putting out crap like this. The only positive of this book is the trade dress. The cons are numerous, and they include it has faith in it, the story is boring, the villains are stupid, the art and colors are terrible, and they ruined Armstrong in the worst way possible. If you're a Valiant fan and you actually want to pick up this book, just remember to wash your hands afterwards because you might get pink eye from touching this much fecal matter. All right, that wraps up my review of Faith Returns #1. I think I've crapped on this character enough for one day at this point, but really, Valiant, why is it so important that you continue to push this character? Can someone please explain it to me? Please comment on this video. I'm seriously confused at this point and want to know a serious answer. And maybe some Valiant fans and faithful Cafeteria Drops viewers can let me know in the comments what you think about Faith Returns #1. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Valiant Comics goodness. We can only go up from here, guys. All right? And that's why I'm staying positive about next week's release, Exo Manowar Invictus. See you guys next time. How's it going, comic book fans? Welcome to another episode of Comic Drops, where we take a look at what's popular in comic books this week and discuss what you should be reading. This week saw the drop of Valiant Comics and Alien Books' Poison Pill for Garnering New Fans. You all know what it is. Faith Returns, issue #2. Look, this book is definitely a comic you should not be reading. I'm pleading with you now, do not support Valiant putting out this type of garbage. Now, of course, I have to read this steaming pile just for you guys, because it's all for the fans in the end. So, does Faith Returns issue #2 somehow claw its way out of the dumpster to achieve greatness? Or does it continue to lay among the trash heap of other failed Valiant books this year? Spoiler alert, it's a complete dumpster fire. Okay, let's get this over with. First up, how is the story of Faith Returns issue #2? Well, it's absolutely terrible, and here's why. Well, actually first, I would like to address something. Who at Valiant thought it would be a great idea to use a font for the title of this book that looks eerily like the font used for the cinematic masterpiece Batman Returns? Not only is Faith Returns the absolute antithesis of that film in quality of story, visuals, and, well, everything, the font personality doesn't even fit the character of Faith. Okay, sorry, I had to get that off my chest. After the cesspool that was Faith Returns issue #1, I didn't think this title could get any worse. But Valiant, you keep proving me wrong. The writing, characters, pacing, and everything else that a good comic should do, Faith Returns just ignores. However, I want to commend Jody Houser on issue #2. Houser has somehow constructed an even more insufferable comic experience than the first time around. The comic opens with Faith, Archer, and Armstrong. Again, Valiant, why do you have to do that to these guys? Visiting, get this, a cat adoption agency called Mortal Catnip Kitten Kage. I guess this is a Mortal Kombat reference, but it just comes off completely lame. Apparently, one of the Faithless, you know that supervillain group from the previous run that doesn't really do anything super villainy, is here staying at the adoption agency because he's a cat. Yeah, that's right. One of the tasks the great Capshaw has Faith tackling is finding a cat. Oh, Valiant, why do you do this? This lame villain's name is Darkstar, although I wouldn't know that if it wasn't for the info dump inside the front cover of this comic. Everything is so well explained in this series, isn't it? Darkstar sends all the cats at the adoption agency to then attack the heroic trio. If all this doesn't sound stupid enough, to defeat Darkstar, Armstrong just wraps him in a coat and drop kicks him. Kind of like I want to drop kick this comic out of a window right now. So in the matter of a few pages, one of the tyrannical Faithless is taken down, and this is the theme of this issue. Spend a couple of pages finding a member of the Faithless, rinse, and repeat. And next, Faith has to track down Chris Criswell. Yeah, that's really his name. And yes, that's really dumb. This guy is an actor who looks like Archer but has a bunch of clones of himself because, well, just because. And he lives in Iowa. We're not given a town or anything, just that he lives in Iowa. I guess he lives in the whole state. Valiant, you can't really expect us fans to take this book seriously if you keep doing things like this. Faith then gets the bright idea to just follow him home, and all of a sudden we're introduced to his army of stunt doubles who are upset at their boss because he wants them to steal a comic book collection. This somehow leads them all to fighting, and then Gate shows up out of nowhere in Iowa to take them all in. And then we get to the final member of the Faithless. Faith has to find Sydney Pierce, who is a Vine alien disguised as a celebrity, according to the front of the book. So Faith arrives in Malibu seemingly on the same day to apprehend this miscreant. Okay, alright, wait a second. How far from Iowa is Malibu? Let's check. Oh, yeah, it's 1,713 miles. Yeah, this seems legit. Anyways, Faith thinks that tracking down the director of the hit piece documentary about her called Fall from Grace would be a great way to find Sydney, so she shows up at Vincent Enfield's house. And guess what? She's right. Oh, the writing is so lazy here. The valiant alien who disguised herself as Sydney Pierce is now disguising herself as Vincent Enfield. You know, I know there's a joke here or some sort of social commentary to be had, but I'm going to leave that for another video. Then Faith catches Sydney's, or Vincent's, or whatever's confession for Gate agents, who then magically appear again to take the final member of the menacing Faithless away in handcuffs. And now Faith has been redeemed as a character, blah, 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 blah. But wait, there's more! Chris Criswell is still at large. Oh no, what will the Valiant Universe do? Well, hopefully Auric will show up, rip him in half, and save us from any more of this intolerable mess. Overall, this story is awful. This is an excellent example of a writer trying to cram as much crap as humanly possible into 27 pages. It makes for an amazingly mind-numbing reading experience. It's lazy writing, and just a collection of disjointed events set in different locations. Like Iowa. It's just bad. It's boring, it's uninteresting, it's Faith. I really don't know what more you want me to say. This character exemplifies everything that is wrong with Valiant right now. More Quantum and Woody? Nope, we have Faith. What about Divinity? Nope, we've got the body positivity Shiro Faith. What about Shadow Man? He's got a game coming out soon. Nah, we just have this girl who floats around a lot and is a social media manager. This is what the kids think is bussin'. This comic is the comic book equivalent of shovelware. Valiant, why do you do this? Why do you do this? All right, let's move on. Now let's discuss the visuals of Faith Returns issue number 2. Although I really don't want to. Okay, so Alita Vidal is back on pencils and colors for this issue of Faith, and well, just like last time, it ain't pretty. The pencils on this issue are all over the place in quality, ranging from bad to completely awful. Not only did this issue remind me of the horrible look given to Armstrong in issue number 1, it also reminded me that this has to be one of the most unintentionally ugly comics I have ever read. I've seen Dollar Tree coloring books with better visuals than this comic book. Characters are drawn in an exaggerated way that is neither visually interesting or consistent throughout the comic. Sometimes Faith is shorter than Archer and Armstrong. Sometimes she's just as tall as they are. Sometimes she has this maniacal, serial killer look in her eyes, and sometimes she's just badly drawn. This is also another example of an artist not wanting to deal with drawing hands, so she just doesn't. It really is like this book is trying to turn off as many fans as possible. Also, the locations and scenery do not look any better. I mean, look at these cars in Iowa. This is laughable at best, completely amateurish at worst. Also, look at the locales that Faith travels to in this issue. The cat adoption agency, Iowa, Malibu, and the inside of her apartment are all drawn in such a basic way that you can't help but get coloring book vibes from this entire comic. And none of the locations have any personality, charm, or impact on each scene, to the point where the background for each panel should be just left blank. Not to mention, the action is framed in such a simplistic way that this book is not only a slog to read, but it's a slog to look at. Apart from what the artist might think, medium and establishing shots should not be used in every panel. It's a good thing to mix up the shots used in each panel to visually engage the reader, but Vidal just doesn't have it. Now, Alita Vidal is on colors for this issue as well, and the colors really do complement the pencils nicely. As in, the pencils are terrible, and it is fitting that the colors are terrible as well. Also, the colors are as basic as they come. Vidal only uses maybe 1, and in some cases 2 degrees of highlights and shading while rendering each panel. I will say that this look is consistent throughout the comic, so there's a positive I can throw at Faith Returns number 2. The colors used in each scene and within each location also do not feel different enough to warrant these places feeling unique. Everything seems to just bleed together without any consideration given to how the reader might view this. And again, it makes for a tiring read. The consistency of just how bad everything is on the visual side of this comic just, yet again, makes me ask, Valiant, why? Why are you actively trying to turn away potential newcomers to the Valiant universe? Why would you even greenlight this travesty of a comic? However, I can level one good thing about this book. The trade dress is excellent. It has a cardstock cover, glossy interior pages, and features cover art from Fernando Baldo, who is not Alita Vidal. Okay, finally, let's review my thoughts on Faith Returns issue number 2 from Valiant Comics and Alien Books. So the pros of this comic are, well, the series is over. Finally. No more Faith in my stack of comics and, yeah, I guess the trade dress. And the cons of this comic book are everything, really. The story is bad. The writing is bad. The art is bad. The pacing is bad. The villains are bad. The heroes are bad. Everything is bad. I mean, this issue is so bad that I question again why Valiant would even release it. Better yet, I'll ask you again, Valiant, why do you keep pushing this character? I've seen the leftover stock of Faith issues at numerous comic book stores. There is no way that this comic is selling well. It never has, so why are you so devoted to this character? Valiant, if you're watching this, it's time to dump Faith. It's been fun, not really, and we all know what you originally tried to do with Faith, but she's not a strong enough character from a story perspective or from a physical perspective to headline her own series, let alone have any real impact on the Valiant universe as a whole. Faith is a joke of a character, and no one is laughing, and the punchline is fell flat on its face. You can do better, Valiant, and we as the fans expect better. Phew. Okay, there. It's over. We've made it. Hopefully none of your eyes have rolled so far back into your eye sockets that you're now staring at your brain. This is the single worst issue of a Valiant comic I have ever seen or ever read. Before you go, let me know what you think in the comments about Faith Returns issue number 2. And keep the hope alive, guys, because next week we have Bloodshot Unleashed Reloaded issue number 4, Ninjak vs. Roku issue number 1, and Rai, the Book of the Dark number 2, all dropping at the same time. See you soon.